Welcome to the podcast where we dive deep with the builders, hustlers, and business owners, turning blue-collar grit into scalable badass businesses. We'll break down their origin stories, real-world struggles, systems that actually work, and advice they'd give to new local service business owners. I'm your host, Romario Martin, and this is the BADASS Remodeler Podcast. Welcome back to the BADASS Remodeler Podcast, where we talk to builders, hustlers, and business owners, turning blue-collar grit into scalable badass businesses. I'm your host, Romario Martin, founder of Bad to Badass, where we help remodelers and service business owners get consistent, high-quality leads and jobs using smart marketing and better systems. And today, we've got a killer guest, someone who's built one of the most systematized, fast-growing service brands in America. He started mowing lawns in college. Today, his company, Augusta Lawn Care, has over 100 franchise locations across the U.S. and Canada. He's an author, a coach, and honestly, one of the most respected minds when it comes to scaling small service businesses without burning out. We're talking about the man himself, Mike Andes. Mike, it's awesome to have you here. Thanks for being on the show. All right, Mike, let's rewind for a second. Before Augusta was a franchise, before the books and the systems, take me back to the earlier days. What was going through your head when you first picked up that mower in college?
I did start college when I was 13, though, so a little younger. I paid my way through college using the lawn care side of things, just pushing a lawnmower around with my brother. And then when I was 18, I dropped out of medical school and started Augusta Lawn Care, went full-time with it by myself. And a few years into it, we were doing almost $1 million in revenue, but had no systems, had no procedures. And in a workplace accident, I was underneath a dump truck. My hoodie caught in the PTO and ended up in the hospital, and realized that my business did not have any systems, and it was really built on the back of me working 80, 90 hours a week out in the field. And so that was really the start of creating content, and then later on using the systems created to build the franchise. And now we have almost 200 locations across the world for Augusta Lawn Care. So that's the short version of it.
Was there a moment when you realized this isn't just a side hustle? This is actually, this could actually be a real company?
Really, that happened when I dropped out of medical school. Because since I was 13 and so young, everyone was always not pushing, but very much I was the young kid going to college, super smart. And things like that. And so when I dropped out, I had a lot of people saying, what are you doing? You're going to go mow grass. It's such a waste of talent. And so it really, from that moment, I was all in. And it definitely took a few years to actually pay off. And it almost took my life in terms of doing the business wrong. However, I think that was I had to go all in there. It's the only thing I knew how to do. I had to pay the bills somehow. And once you drop out of medical school and go from that kind of white collar industry to I'm going to go mow grass and continue to do that the rest of my career. For some people, that was a little bit jarring, but that was kind of the time to burn the boats and jump all in.
And I know a lot of business owners listening, especially remodelers, they start small. Maybe it's just them and a truck, a couple of guys. When you were in that early phase, what were the biggest struggles you ran into that nobody warned you about?
I think part of it is the fact that if you build a great service, that customers don't leave when you raise prices. That's really the objective of service businesses. Build a business that has a good enough service, a great enough service to where when you raise prices, customers that are on a recurring subscription don't leave. That's the whole objective. And if you do that, you can build the business, even if it's a slow growth. If I can just add 2, 3, 4 new recurring customers, in my case, mowing customers every month, over the course of time, that it becomes something really meaningful. And so I would encourage everyone to be thinking about recurring revenue and thinking more importantly when it comes to home services or any seasonal businesses, how do I remove my off season? How do I actually make sure I get leads during my off season? Because even when we were doing over $1 million in revenue, I would have to save up $100,000 just to burn through it during the off season. And so figuring out how do we actually make money for 3 or 4 months out of the year when we can't mow grass was super important. So removing the seasonality of a business is extremely important, both from a valuation perspective and from a cash flow perspective, as well as just even you're well, I don't want to sell it. I don't need to make a bunch of money. I'm happy as it. Great. Let's just create systems in place so you can at least break even for 3 to 4 months of the year so that you can actually hand this off to someone and go on a vacation once in a while.
Yeah, that's so real. Because everyone romanticizes starting a business, but those early years and where you really get punched in the face by reality, for sure. If you could go back to college, Mike, what would you tell him before starting?
I think first I would say that the biggest hindrance to growth in business is pride. It is the inability to learn from one's own mistakes or the mistakes of others and to apply that to your day-to-day life. And so for me, I could very well have closed the business after that accident at the dump truck, realizing I didn't have a business and wasn't making money. It burned all of the cash during the off season. Or I could have been like, I admit the fact that I do not know how to run this business and I need to learn how. And I need to rebuild pay for performance and open book management and profit sharing and different systems inside the business. Otherwise, I will not have a business. And so many people, because that we have pride wrapped up with our decisions, we stick to the same thing that's causing us to go bankrupt for month after month, year after year without ever changing, instead of just being humble enough to realize that I don't know everything. I might be wrong, God forbid, and there are other people out there that have the answers for me.
Yeah, spot on. So let's fast forward a bit. Augusta isn't just a company now, it's a franchise system. You got locations all over the country, franchise owners, shared playbooks, profit first models. What inspired you to go the franchise route instead of just expanding corporately?
Experience with the dump truck. That's when I started creating content. I created a landscape business course 2 weeks after that incident and just started documenting all of the things I was changing in the business. And I realized that if I would have had kids or a spouse at that time, I would have gone bankrupt and they would have gone hungry. And so I didn't want that for anyone else. And I figured I would just document all the things I changed in the business. So like the first few years of my content was me up in my bedroom talking to the camera up against the wall, just being like, okay, so this is what we changed today because we stink at this, and here's how we're doing the marketing, and we messed up pay for performance, and so that's how it really began. And now it's just a function of when I was doing that online, what was so disappointing to me was that people looked to me as a content creator, they looked to me as a consultant, but they never looked to me as someone that they could actually learn and change their business. And it was like optional information. And I'm like, forget this. I want to be able to have a franchise where we share the brand together. We wear the same uniform. And when I say something, they know it's in their best interest and my best interest. And so the way to get best system adoption is to be able to say, hey, this is part of the brand guidelines, and we actually enforce these things to happen. And so even to date, even though we have P4P software, which everyone can use to do pay for performance, still to date, we still have more owners of Augusta Lawn Care that do pay for performance than the entire collective of any other public user out there, even though it's available to everyone, simply because, again, it's optional to them. It's not to Augusta Lawn Care. And so I knew that in order to see the change I wanted to see in the industry of lawn care and landscaping, we would have to have those systems. And in order to have those systems, we would need a brand and a community that wore the same jersey. And so that's really why we started franchising. And we think we need about 1,000 locations to be able to have the impact we want on lawn care and landscaping, to where the competitors start doing the systems we talk about because they need to in order to compete.
So what do you think makes Augusta different from other home service franchise out there? Because from what I've seen, you guys care more about developing entrepreneurs than not just, selling license. Yeah,
like I will say first, in terms of what makes Augusta different, I'll just take that part and not compare yet. I would say it's the people. The community is phenomenal. The people inside the organization. The vast majority of entrepreneurs lose because they quit, not because they're bad at entrepreneurship, but because they just simply quit. And by having a community of people that are backing you up, pushing you, coaching you, supporting you, you're less inclined to quit. So that's the first thing. And if you don't have a community, it's not about a franchise. It's like get in a community of people that are pushing you forward, and when you fall down, they pick you back up. That's the main objective. And if it was just that was probably the most valuable thing I would say about any franchise or community. In terms of in comparison to other franchises, the bottom line is our goal is to make home service business owners rich. It has nothing to do with them joining Augusta. And when we started the franchise, I always said, if that's the goal, it means we shouldn't be charging a royalty, because the more money you make in the franchise, the more I take away from you. That's not necessarily making you rich. That's lining my pockets. And so we say, hey, it's a flat monthly fee. So if you make $250,000 a year or $4 million a year at Augusta, you pay the same monthly fee. And so those sort of initiatives allow people to actually build real wealth. And then we have different stages of wealth. So when they get to stage 7, we talk about like moving money out of Augusta, like real estate and other businesses, and talk about tax stuff just to develop their wealth. And that's really our goal, is that someone come through Augusta, they have multiple locations, they copy and paste, they have general managers running the business with back-end support from here at Command Center, be able to be a remote or virtual owner over the course of years, and then be able to then take that cash flow and put it towards tax-advantaged assets like real estate, the stock market, and learn how to do that. So yeah, it's much more about the long-term wealth of the owners.
Yeah, and that's something I love. It's not just about that growth, but It's about leadership. So how do you train or mentor young entrepreneurs to think like owners, especially if they've never run
So
a
we actually
business
have
before?
stages of success for technicians, general managers, and then owners. And our goal is to get people that start off as technicians to become general managers and then become owners. And we've actually greased that gear by saying if you go through that program, you actually don't even pay an initial franchise fee. So the $24,000, you don't even pay it. It's free. You can go through the system that way. And so if someone's just getting started and they have no money, they can just start as mowing grass, become a manager, spend several years, develop the skills, move into ownership, and there's a clear path. So 7 steps and stages for technicians, 7 stages for general managers, 7 stages for owners. So there's 21 stages of success total. And so regardless if someone's young or and has no skills or has plenty of capital and can immediately jump to stage 1 of being an owner, regardless, it is a function of get on the map, like get started on the journey of constant improvement. And that's our number one core value is constant improvement. It's more than just something on the wall. It's like, no, the whole goal is to get to the next stage. Whether you are at the first stage of an owner or the 3rd stage of a technician or the 5th stage of being a GM, the whole goal is to progress on that map and that map of success. And so when I look at we have a lot of young guys that join the franchise because it's a low barrier to entry, relatively low cost to join. And so we have a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-old owners that now have 1, 2, 3 locations. And so the hardest skill for them to learn is most of the time leadership, because leads are not so hard. You follow a system, you run ads, you provide a great service, you get customers. But then managing people is much more difficult. And that's a skill that none of us inherently have. Some of us inherently have good communication skills and sell, water to a fish. But it's a function of the leadership skills are many times the things that have to be developed the most. And so that's when we have the masterminds, we have coaching. These are the things that we try to have the soft skills that are a little more difficult to create systems around. Like it's difficult to be like, when they say X, you say Y. When they say Z, you say A. Like that's difficult in a leadership position. You have to be much more nimble. And so that is certainly a constraint for many of their growth.
Yeah, and that right there is what every remodeler, I think, listening needs to hear. Because even if you're not a franchising, you are building a team. So that leadership.
Yeah, and the thing I like to say is like we are not in the service business, we're in the systems business. And once you start thinking, especially once you start growing past 6, 7, 800,000 annual revenue, you start having middle management, your business is not selling the service anymore. It is not even doing the service. It's actually a function of just building the systems and then refining that, the training, the onboarding, the scripts. That's your job now as the owner of the org.
Yeah, especially if you want actual freedom from your business. Yeah. So how do you get people to buy in and not just,
I think aligning incentives is the most important thing. And so I think from a technician's perspective, the thing that they're looking for, that we are looking for as owners is like, hey, I want them to work as hard as me. Like, why can't they work as quickly? And they think about the customer, they think about upsells. Well, the reason they don't is because they're not compensated like you and they don't have all the information that you have. And so when we do for technicians, P for P is pay for performance. They get a percentage of all the labor revenue they earn for the business. Now they're compensated like an owner because all of us as owners are 100% commission. And the second thing is information of an owner, and that is open book management, which means I share the numbers of the business with the team, good, bad, or ugly, and then I give them a piece of the action, so profit sharing. And so that's for the technicians. For the general managers, we have similar compensation models, and that is a lot of times profit sharing. They get a big chunk of it. So like in my locations, I give 50% of profits to the general manager. You better believe that the person is very incentivized to run that business efficiently and profitably, and their paycheck reflects it. And so aligning incentives, I think, is the number one thing to think about, and spending real time on developing a compensation model and a system of incentives is important. And like Charlie Munger says, show me the incentive, I will show you the outcome. And it's the same thing that's true when it comes to leadership.
Right. Let's nerd out for a second here. Because one thing you preach hard is systems over hustle. And that definitely hits home for me. So what are some of the core systems or KPIs you think every service-based business should be tracking, whether they're cutting lawns, remodeling kitchens,
I think
whatever
you
they're
can boil
doing?
pretty much every service business down to 3 elements. One is sales, second is operations, third is admin. Now, we need to, if we're going to run this business remotely, essentially be able to have certain metrics that make sure that sales is doing well, operations are going smoothly, and admin is going smoothly. Now, sales is getting the work, operations is doing the work, admin is getting paid for the work. And so when I think about what metrics do I realistically need to know, I don't need to know a lot. I need to know when it comes to sales or getting the work is what's my customer acquisition cost and what's my close rate. And then when it comes to operations, I need to know, are customers happy with the work that's being done? So customer satisfaction scores as well as efficiency score. In other words, is the labor that's getting performed being done efficiently? The budget hours divided by clocked hours, there's your number. And then for admin, I want to know are we profitable? Like, are we actually getting paid for the work we're doing and doing so in an efficient manner? And so if you had those 5 numbers, you can pretty much run a business remotely. There are a lot of other little things. If something's going wrong, you might need to know other numbers to diagnose the issue. Like, why is our close rate low? Well, is it because of our time to lead? Is it because our prices are too high? Is it there's other things to dig into, but if you have those 5 numbers, you can usually look at the sales, operations, admin of a business and remotely be able to run the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the gold. And you were building Augusta. When you were building Augusta, what systems or even simple process made the biggest difference in,
Two things.
freeing
So
up
pay
your
for performance is the biggest one, because literally the year we implemented, I went from making no money to being very profitable. So that was definitely the biggest one, because you're ultimately, as a service business, you are selling labor. And so if that labor is not efficiently being carried out, you're not making money. And so P4P helps with that dramatically. The second thing I would say more concretely is estimate videos. So when you're at the customer's property, meeting them, talking about the scope of work, making a video of the project then, so you never return back and show the project to the customer, to the crew. And that came as a result of when we had 4 or 5 big projects going at the same time, we had to start staggering the start time for crews because I have to go show them the project. It's like such a waste of time. And then also the customer starts talking to me instead of the crew. So I become the bottleneck for the rest of the job. And so that saved probably 3 to 4 hours a day for the estimator, just by making estimate videos of every single project. So if we just take the video, we attach it inside Copilot, it compresses it down, it's inside of the software. And then when the crew's on the property, they can just see the video there.
Nice. And there's this fine line between using tech to scale and becoming disconnected from the work or the people. How do you balance automation with human connection, making sure the business still feels
I think it's kind of like
personal?
when people say that being rich makes you bad, having a lot of money makes you bad. What it does is it compounds and magnifies what's already inside of you. So if you're a bad person, you get a bunch of money, you're going to do a lot of bad things with it. If you are a good person, you're probably going to do a lot of good things with that money. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to this. It's just a function of, if you have more of your fundamental question was what? Sorry, I messed up there.
Yeah. So basically, how do you balance automation with human connection and making sure the business?
Yeah. So I think that technology is the exact same way. The same way that when you'd say if someone's rich, it just compounds and magnifies the good or bad that's already inside them. Technology does the exact same thing, and automation is the same thing. And I think if you have the customer first mentality, you can use automation, you can use AI, you can use software to compound the personability that you can have with customers. So, I can automate text messages. Now, do those text messages to customers need to be robotic? No, they can be very personalized. They can still have a human that responds back to them, but they can be systematized in a way that I don't have to remember to create the text. The text can already be sent out as an automation, but then I'm able to scale the personability. And so with the advent of software and AI, I think now you have the opportunity to actually be more personable to all of your customers as you scale, instead of relying on, back in the day, only solo operators could have that personal connection with the customer.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Yeah, I feel like there's the difference between being a boss and being a builder, right? One thing that always stood out about you, even with all your success, is that you're very hands-on. You still get your hands dirty in the business, experimenting with new systems, and talk directly to franchise owners. Why I stayed that involved when you could easily step back?
I think the big thing as any organization grows is to make sure that you don't lose touch with the frontline team, whether it be technicians, managers, or owners. And so this is many times why when you look at private equity coming into a company and buying them out, you can almost guarantee they're going to reduce the amount of innovation that's going to happen. And a lot of times it's just simply because private equity does not care about the human connection. They don't. They care about spreadsheets and numbers. And as long as those numbers are going up and to the right, they're happy. I look at it otherwise, and that is an organization that with numbers going up and to the right could simply be a lagging measure of huge amounts of work that was put in years ago. But it is at the detriment of the organization internally, as well as their customers that are coming on now. And so I think that private equity is a microcosm of the leadership not being connected to the frontline team and to the people inside the organization. And so we just try to avoid that.
So do you ever feel that tension between growth and control? Like, how do you scale fast but keep the culture tight?
There's risk to everything. And, back in the day, I didn't want to get married. And I said, there's no way I'm going to get married because it's so risky. And one thing my dad said that was opening my eyes. He said, well, getting inside of a car is risky. And so I started thinking about it. I said, it's true, because if you got into a car and 1 of 10 times you got in an accident, you wouldn't get in the car. But we all do, because it makes everything go faster. And so the question becomes, if I hire people, will I increase the amount of risk and liability I have, or the option that something could go wrong, or the business could they can mess up on my behalf, or they can make me look bad? Yes, that's a risk you have. But if you have the audacity to say, I want to build a $5 million business, a $10 million business, just show me a company that's done that without ever hiring people or developing a team or developing an organization, and they don't exist. And so I would push people to say, yes, there is a risk, but when you have the size of goal that you want, you have to ask yourself, when I work backwards from that goal, does that require people? And for the vast majority of us, it does.
Something you mentioned before, that faith and purpose plays a big role in how you lead. What does that look like for you?
I do have, for me personally, a lot of those elements. I try not to project it on either customers or my internal team. I more or less want to create a set of incentives and a structure in which they meet their goals. So my values, like, they will be achieved if I am successful. But I want it to be where if the team member, if the franchise owner, if the customer is successful, or a member of our software, like, if they're successful, I want their ideals and their vision and their goals to happen. And I don't know what those are, and I don't really care. And so I think when we start projecting as leaders on our team or our customers that they should think a certain way, or success for them looks like this, it leads to failure, versus being like, I just want people to be successful, and I will build an organization which gets them closer to their goals. I tell them what their goals are, but I'm simply going to make sure that we are all collectively successful and get closer to the goals that we individually have.
Muted. Man, that's such an important reminder for sure. So you've built this massive network, coached countless business owners, written books, and hosted your own podcast. Have no idea how you do all that. But I'm curious, like, what's next for you? What's the next evolution of Augusta Lawn Care, or the Mike and just your brand
right
in
now,
general?
we're really just trying to copy and paste more locations. We have Copilot CRM. We have the franchise, and then we have the media. That's kind of like the 3 prongs of the whole co. We plan to go public with it eventually, but we just got to keep executing more and more and making it better and better for our owners. And so that's really all we focus on.
And basically, if you had to start all over again, same skills, same work ethic, but just $1,000 in your pocket,
I would just start
would you do
talking
first?
to customers, knocking on doors, realizing that I would want to use a service that doesn't require a lot of capital, just requires my time. Usually if you have $1,000, you have a lot of time and no money. And so I would be knocking on doors, probably with a rake and a broom, and pulling weeds, and I'd start there.
I love that. That's the kind of thing that will save people. So Mike, this was awesome, man. You've built something that every small business owner, especially in the trades, can look up to. For everyone listening, if they wanted to work with Mike, where would they check you out?
All my content's free on YouTube, and then MikeAndes.com. I have a bunch of courses and it's all free. A bunch of workshops around the off season and pay for performance and stuff. It's all free. And then we have another big free training on MikeAndes.com/Black Friday. I'm doing 3 to 4 hours of training on how to do the multiple location model and have a compensation model for GMs. It's all free. So just go check out MikeAndes.com.
And we'll link that in the description as well. And if you're a remodeler who wants to scale like the pros, get consistent projects and predictable profit, grab our free $2 million BADASS Remodeler Playbook at badtobadass.com. I'm Romario Martin. This is the BADASS Remodeler Podcast, where we turn blue-collar grit into badass businesses. Catch you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to the BADASS Remodeler Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and pulled some real no bullshit takeaways to help you grow your business and your mindset. If this episode hit home, do me a favor. Share it with another remodeler or business owner who's out there grinding to build something better. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss a conversation that could change your game. And if you or someone you know has a badass story to share, please contact us at badtobadass.com. We'd love to hear it because your wins can inspire the next builder up. I'm Romario Martin, reminding you to keep building bold, keep leading strong, and stay badass.